Do you ever wonder if pain has any purpose? Or if it's just punishment?
Purpose? That's hard to say. Most of the time, when I'm hurting, it feels meaningless. Like the world just enjoys watching me suffer.
I used to think that too. But then I read Khalil Gibran. He said something that stuck with me. Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding.
So, pain isn't just a wound, it's transformation.
Exactly. Maybe the suffering we try to escape is actually shaping us. Maybe it's the hidden teacher we've been avoiding.
Imagine this. You're standing alone in your room late at night. Everything is quiet, and yet, inside your chest there's a storm, a grief so heavy it makes it hard to breathe, a loss so sharp you can feel it cutting into the very fabric of who you are. In those moments, pain doesn't feel like poetry. It doesn't feel beautiful. It feels unbearable. But here's the question we rarely ask. What if the very darkness you fear is the key to your transformation? What if pain is not your enemy, but your hidden ally? This is not an easy truth to swallow. We are taught to avoid pain, to silence it, numb it, escape it. But Khalil Gibran, one of the most profound poets and philosophers of the 20th century, saw it differently. He believed pain is not simply suffering. It is a kind of sacred doorway, the place where the human spirit breaks, only to grow stronger. In this video, we'll explore the beauty of pain through Gibran's eyes. We'll dive into his philosophy, trace its roots in psychology and spirituality, and uncover how pain, though feared and avoided, may hold the very essence of our becoming. But before we begin, let me challenge you with something. When was the last time pain changed you? Not just hurt you, but shaped you? Maybe it was heartbreak. Maybe it was betrayal. Or maybe it was a slow, suffocating emptiness of being unseen. If you look closely enough, you might find that your pain did not destroy you. It remade you. In The Prophet, Gibran writes, "Much of your pain is self-chosen. It is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self." Think about that. Pain as a medicine. Not sweet, not easy to swallow, but necessary. Gibran suggests that within us lives a kind of inner physician, a healer who uses suffering as a tool of transformation. And yet we resist, we run, because the medicine burns. But isn't it true? Haven't you noticed that some of the deepest wisdom in your life didn't come during moments of joy, but during moments of loss? That strange clarity after heartbreak, that fierce strength after betrayal, that fragile humility after failure. We rarely recognize it in the moment. Pain feels like destruction, but only later do we realize it was construction all along. One of Gibran's most haunting lines is this: "Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding." Picture a seed, safe, untouched, wrapped in its shell. It doesn't know the sky. It doesn't know the soil. It doesn't know the sun. To grow, the shell must crack. To become what it's meant to be, it must break. We are the same. Our comfort zones, our shells protect us, but they also imprison us. Pain comes as a great disruptor, tearing the shell apart. And in that violent breaking, we glimpse truths we never saw before. But here's the paradox. We hate the breaking, yet we crave the becoming. We want growth without discomfort, change without chaos, wisdom without suffering. And life says, no, you cannot have one without the other. You might ask, why dwell on pain? Isn't it better to focus on healing, on happiness, on moving on? But here's the thing. Without understanding the role of pain, we risk living shallow lives. Lives where every discomfort is seen as a curse. Every loss is meaningless. But if we see pain as a teacher, if we understand its beauty, then suffering is no longer just suffering. It becomes a path, a way, a strange kind of gift. We've seen how Gibran frames pain not as a curse, but as the breaking of a shell. But let's go deeper. What happens after breaking? What is born from this shattering? Khalil Gibran wrote not only of sorrow, but also of art, love, and the human spirit. And for him, pain was inseparable from creation itself. He once said, "Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars." Think of the world's greatest artists, thinkers, and revolutionaries. Their brilliance was not born in comfort. It was forged in struggle. Vincent van Gogh painted his most haunting works while wrestling with madness. Beethoven composed symphonies even after losing his hearing. Frida Kahlo transformed physical agony into canvases that still bleed with beauty. Would their art have existed without pain? Or was it pain itself that became their raw material? Their brush, their ink, their melody. And isn't that true for us too? Think of the diary you wrote after heartbreak, the song you listened to on repeat after loss, the journal entry that poured out of you when you couldn't sleep. Pain demands expression. It forces us to create, even if what we create is just a whispered prayer in the dark. But let's pause for a moment. Not all pain becomes art. Some pain hides. Some pain suffocates in silence. How many people walk through life carrying invisible burdens, smiling at the world while bleeding within? This hidden suffering shapes us just as much as the kind that screams out. Psychologists call it masked grief, a sorrow that has no voice. And yet, it still molds us, often more than we realize. When Gibran writes that pain is the bitter potion, he doesn't promise that we'll always know its purpose. Sometimes the meaning of our suffering is revealed only years later. Sometimes never. And that uncertainty, that silence, is part of the burden we carry. But maybe silence itself is a kind of creation, a reshaping of the soul, subtle but profound. You may not paint it or sing it, but it lives in your gaze, your choices, your voice when you finally speak. Let me take you to a small village in Lebanon, not far from where Gibran himself grew up. A man once told me about the Lebanese Civil War. He was a teenager when it began. For years, he lived with the sound of bombs echoing in the distance, friends disappearing overnight, family fleeing to survive. When I asked him how he endured it, he didn't speak of revenge or bitterness. He spoke of silence. He said, "You learn to live with the pain. It becomes part of you, but it also teaches you what matters." Decades later, he was still scarred by the memories, but had also become one of the kindest, most generous men I've ever met. His suffering had carved out of him not hardness, but compassion. Pain had burned him. Yes, but it had also hollowed out a space for empathy. This is what Gibran means when he says pain breaks the shell. The breaking can destroy you, or it can open you. Here lies the paradox. Pain is inevitable, but transformation is not. Two people can endure the same suffering. One grows bitter, the other grows wiser. One closes, the other opens. The difference is not in the pain, but in what we do with it. Gibran reminds us that pain has beauty, but only if we let it. If we resist it, numb it, deny it, we rob ourselves of its lessons. But if we sit with it, face it, even honor it, we discover something strange. Pain does not only take from us, it gives. It gives depth. It gives compassion. It gives us the strength to endure the next storm and the wisdom to guide others through theirs. So the question returns, what do we do with our pain? Hide it? Run from it? Or allow it to break us open? You might say, but I don't want to be broken. I understand. None of us do. But remember the seed. Without the breaking, there is no growth. Without the shattering, there is no becoming. Perhaps that is why Gibran insists on the beauty of pain. Not because suffering is pleasant, but because it is transformative. Not because it feels good, but because it reveals who we are. So, what has your pain revealed about you? Has it hardened you? Or has it hollowed out a space for something greater to grow? We've seen how pain can shape us, sometimes into artists, sometimes into healers, sometimes into something we never expected. But to truly understand the depth of pain, we have to go further, beyond Gibran, beyond poetry, into the shadows of psychology and philosophy, where thinkers like Jung and Nietzsche dare to dwell. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, believed that within each of us lives a shadow, the dark, hidden parts of ourselves that we deny, repress, or fear. These are our buried desires, our anger, our envy, our wounds. And here's the unsettling truth. Pain is often the doorway to the shadow. When life shatters us, it cracks open a vault we've kept locked. Suddenly, our shadow spills out. We confront feelings we've avoided for years. Grief, rage, helplessness, shame. Jung insisted that facing the shadow is not optional. It's necessary. Without it, we remain half alive, fragmented. He wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Isn't that haunting? We don't find wholeness by chasing light. We find it by entering the dark, by walking straight into the cavern of our pain and looking in the eye. Now let's turn to Friedrich Nietzsche. Few philosophers spoke of suffering as fiercely as he did. To Nietzsche, pain was not just unavoidable, it was the very soil of greatness. He declared, "To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering." Nietzsche's entire philosophy was built around what he called amor fati, the love of one's fate, not just enduring what happens, but embracing it, loving it, even the agony, even the loss. Why? Because he believed that without suffering, we remain ordinary. It is through hardship that we are tested, sharpened, reborn. Pain is not a detour. It is a path itself. But here's the catch. Nietzsche was a romantic about suffering. He knew it could crush you. He knew it could destroy you. But he also believed it could elevate you if you chose to use it, if you dare to transform it into strength. Gibran, Jung, Nietzsche, they converge on one unsettling truth. Pain reveals. It reveals our shadow. It reveals our resilience. It reveals a thin line between despair and transformation. Think of a mirror. When life is easy, the mirror reflects something pleasant, controlled, polished. But when pain strikes, the mirror cracks. And in those cracks, we glimpse parts of ourselves we never wanted to see. Maybe you discovered, in your suffering, that you were stronger than you thought. Or maybe you discovered the opposite, that you were more fragile, more vulnerable than you ever imagined. Either way, the mirror did not lie. Pain showed you who you are. And perhaps that's its cruelest beauty. It strips away illusions. It tears down the masks. Let me tell you a story. It's about a woman named Sophia, a painter from Vienna. For years, she painted only light. The skies, the flowers, the beauty of the visible world. Her art was celebrated, but she felt hollow. Then her husband died, suddenly in an accident. The grief nearly destroyed her. For months, she couldn't touch a brush. She said she felt like she was drowning in black water. But one night, in the middle of her despair, she picked up her paints again. Except this time, she didn't paint light. She painted darkness. She painted the faces of grief, the weight of death, the emptiness of loss. Those paintings, born from her suffering, became her greatest works. Not because they were pretty, but because they were true. Sophia once said in an interview, "Before my pain, I painted what I saw. After my pain, I painted what I knew." That is the transformation of suffering. It takes us from illusion to reality, from surface to depth. It makes us speak not from our masks, but from our wounds. So here's the paradox. Pain feels like destruction, but it is often construction in disguise. It feels like death, but it carries a seed of rebirth. Jung called this the individuation process, the forging of the self through the crucible of struggle. Nietzsche called it the will to power, the strength to rise not despite suffering, but through it. And Gibran, he called it beauty, the strange, haunting beauty that only pain can reveal. It is a crucible, a fire, and though it burns us, it also shapes us. So I'll ask you again, what has your pain shown you? Have you seen your shadow? Have you glimpsed strength you didn't know you had? Or has your suffering left you trembling, uncertain, lost? Whatever the answer, it matters. Because pain is not something to hide from. It is something to confront, to wrestle with, to learn from. And if you dare to look into that mirror, if you dare to love your fate, you may discover what Gibran, Jung, and Nietzsche all try to tell us. That in the hard pain lies not just suffering, but the possibility of transformation. Khalil Gibran wrote, Love knows not its own depth until the hour of separation. Isn't that unsettlingly true? We say we love while we are happy, but it's only when loss comes, when love is torn away, that we feel its depth. Pain is the measure of love. Think about it. Every deep connection carries within it the seed of suffering. To love is to risk heartbreak. To open your soul to another is to accept the possibility of loss. Without pain, love would be shallow, weightless. It is precisely because it hurts that it matters. This is why Gibran also wrote, "Love gives naught but itself and takes naught but from itself. When love beckons to you, follow him, though his ways are hard and steep. Love wounds, and yet without that wounding it would not be love. It would be convenience." But let's step beyond the personal. Pain is not only yours or mine, it is ours. Humanity itself is a tapestry woven from suffering. Wars, exiles, betrayals, revolutions. Generations marked by wounds they didn't choose but inherited. The refugee who leaves behind their homeland, carrying nothing but memory. The mother who buries her child because of famine. The young soldier whose eyes have seen too much too soon. Their pain is not just personal. It belongs to us all. And here's the haunting truth. Collective suffering often births collective strength. Nations rebuild from ashes. Communities rise from tragedies. Families find unity after loss. In the cracks of history, resilience is born. Gibran himself lived this reality. He was a child when his family fled Lebanon for America, escaping poverty and oppression. Exile was his wound, and also his gift. It gave him perspective to write for all humanity, not just for one land. His pain became universal. Let's go even deeper. Pain is not only psychological, not only philosophical, it is also spiritual. Across cultures, suffering has been seen as a sacred passage. In Christianity, the cross is both agony and redemption. In Buddhism, the first noble truth is that life is suffering, and yet, through suffering, one may awaken. In Sufism, the mystical path Gibran was deeply influenced by, pain is seen as a fire that burns away illusion, leaving only truth. Is it possible, then, that pain is not an obstacle to spiritual growth, but the very path of it? What if our darkest nights are not mistakes, but invitations? Invitations to transcend the self, to see beyond the smallness of our ego, to encounter something larger, deeper, eternal. Let me tell you another story. It's about a man named Elias, a Lebanese poet who, like Gibran, left his homeland during war. He told me once about standing at the port of Beirut, watching his city burn in the distance as he boarded a ship. He said the pain of leaving was unbearable. He felt as if he had died, yet was forced to go on living. For years, he carried that exile inside him, a silent grief that never left. But when he began to write, he realized something. His poetry was not only about his own suffering. It was about every refugee, every exile, every person who has lost a home. His pain became a bridge, a way to connect with strangers across borders. He told me, "In losing my country, I found a world." This is a paradox again. Pain breaks, but in the breaking, it unites. We've seen pain as personal, collective, spiritual. But before we conclude, let's look at pain in its most paradoxical form, as the birthplace of transformation itself, within history, within identity, within the very fabric of human progress. History does not move forward in times of ease. It moves forward in times of struggle. Think about it. Revolutions are not born in comfort. They erupt from the raw wounds of oppression. Civil rights are not granted by generosity. They are demanded in blood, tears, and chains broken. Every turning point in history has been baptized in pain. The collapse of empires, the exile of prophets, the sacrifices of unknown martyrs whose names we will never read in books, but whose suffering shaped the world we live in. Gibran understood this intimately. Living between East and West, between exile and belonging, he knew that the scars of a people become their strength, that out of shared suffering rises shared destiny. But it isn't only history. it is also personal. Each of us experiences a crucifixion, a death of the self we once were, the end of a relationship, the loss of a dream, the breaking of an identity. And in that death, we feel destroyed. But what if this crucifixion is not the end, but the beginning? Jung spoke of individuation, the painful shedding of masks to discover the true self. Nietzsche spoke of becoming who we are through struggle. And Gibran, he gave us words for it. Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. It is as if life insists that we cannot remain who we are. We must be broken, burned, reshaped, and the fire is always pain. Consider Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison, stripped of freedom, separated from family, confined to a cell so small he could barely stretch his arms. Most people would have emerged bitter, consumed by hatred. But Mandela came out transformed. He once said, "Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies." It was pain, long, endless pain, that refined him into the leader capable of forgiving, of uniting, of healing a broken nation. Without suffering, there would have been no Mandela as the world remembers him. This is a paradox again. Pain destroys many, but it also creates giants. In mythology, the phoenix burns in its own fire before it rises anew. What if that's not just myth? What if that's us? Each time pain engulfs us, we are given a choice: to remain in ashes or to rise from them, to stay consumed or to be remade. But here's the terrifying truth. Rising is not guaranteed. Some are destroyed by pain. Some never recover. That's what makes it so dangerous and so sacred. It is not automatic. It is alchemy. It demands something of us: courage, endurance, surrender. And yet, if we dare to face it, pain does not just wound. It resurrects. Let me ask you something. What if the very moments you cursed as your darkest were actually the ones that saved you? What if the heartbreak that shattered you also freed you from someone who could never see you? What if the failure that humiliated you also redirected you toward the path you were meant to walk? What if the grief that hollowed you also gave you the depth to love more fiercely than before? Pain does not just take, it gives. It does not just destroy, it creates. And maybe that is why Gibran, Nietzsche, Jung, all in different ways, point us to the same conclusion. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is the midwife of becoming. We began with a question. What if the darkness you fear is within you? What if pain is not your enemy, but your hidden ally? Through Khalil Gibran's words, through Jung's shadows, through Nietzsche's What a Fate, through the stories of those who suffered and yet rose, we've seen that pain is more than suffering. It is the breaking of the shell, the bitter potion, the crucible of becoming. It is personal. It is collective. It is spiritual. It is history itself. And always it is paradox. Pain destroys, yet it also creates. It wounds, yet it also heals. It is the question and the answer, the loss and the gift. Gibran once wrote, "The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain." So perhaps the real beauty of pain is this. It makes us capable of depth, of compassion, of love that is not shallow, but eternal. Without suffering, we remain on the surface. With it, we sink into the depths of what it means to be human. So I leave you with this. When pain comes again, as it always does, will you resist it, numb it, curse it, or will you dare to look in the eye? Will you allow it to break you open, to carve you deeper, to shape you into what you were meant to become? If this reflection spoke to you, I invite you to sit with your own pain tonight. Write about it. Reflect on it. See what it has already revealed. And if this journey resonated with you, share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your story, how pain has shaped you. Until next time, stay in the dark long enough to see what it has to teach you.